So the second model is a similar model to the first overlap, but in this case we're going to use a traditional Gauntlet version. The Gauntlet design is basically looking like this and requires to make a seam of the material on the outside. I'm using once again here a textile pattern that actually makes it easier for me to size it accordingly. So the material I'm going to use now is the Immo Plus material. I use an Immo Plus that is treated, which is a non-sticky version. So that requires, when I do the seam on actually welding it together, that I don't have to be that accurate, because I can do this as a separate kind of welding later on. I just need to get the shape. So I always test the patient in the pinch just to see the position of the thumb and make sure that I have enough space over the thenar eminence in the application. So this is the way I've cut my application. I use a 1.6 millimeter Immo, and we basically immerse that into the water. So this material turns translucent once it's ready. I have my setting at around about 75 degrees Celsius. And as soon as the material starts darkening, then it's ready for application. So now the material is ready. I will then basically remove it from the splint pan. I just remove a little bit of moisture on the material, and then I go in and I position that on the patient. Make sure that you get a little bit of a web space over the MCP, and then I start by folding the material together step by step, and at the same time I position also the two strips of the material on the outside. So I usually just connect them like this. Then I continue to compress the material together so it gets basically side by side. That way the fitting is actually going to be perfect. So I have two ways now. If I can't remove the material because it becomes too tight, then I can always open up the seam that I've done. The seam is not permanent in that way. That also means that I have to prepare to do a welding on the material later on. So ready for the turn, or?
Whenever you want.
So we can see that the configuration of the thermoplastic is going down over the CMC. I have the weld there, and on the opposite side basically goes on the upper side. So then we remove the material gently by separating it, and then we can try and see. I can basically get it out, and then it's in one piece. What I have now is a circular shape, and I have a material sticking out, and this it's not necessary to have. So what I will utilize is I utilize my scissor, and I will cut about 2 to 3 millimeter left, like that, sticking out. This material I will utilize to stabilize the application. And the way I do this is I will have to immerse that into the water. So I just immerse that part that I need to basically heat. And since the material now is double, I have to make sure that it actually heats properly on both sides. Once I've done that, then I will take the material and I fold it basically to the side. So I'm utilizing that to become like a seam. And I work with both my fingers pressing from each side. That means that it becomes smooth on the inside, and since the material is folded, there will be an additional reinforcement. Since I've used the memory in the material, I usually do it this way. As soon as I pressed it, I will apply it again on the patient and let it sit and cool there. Then I have a quite smooth kind of inside, outside that is reinforced that can never crack open. So once I've done that, then I need to determine the length of the shanks. And the way I do that is by removing that on the patient, and then I will cut away some of the material. Then I want to also shorten the IP, and the way I do that is I put my scissor in and I cut first 5 millimeter. Don't cut too much, as we want to use the material to roll as well. So we just make sure that we get over the IP joint. As you can see here, it is still too long. Patient can't basically flex with the IP. So in order to make that possible, I will utilize the additional material I have and roll it down so it becomes smoother in that case. That will also make it easier for the patient to remove the thumb. So what I do simply here is actually moving it into my splint pan, heating around about 1 centimeter of the material. The first thing I do is I roll the material, and since I want to have the possibility to do more flexion in the IP, I roll that one a little bit deeper, and the other parts I go slightly higher on. So then I just work the material circular like this, just in order to make a very smooth kind of fit. And then we apply that again. And as we can see now, patient can actually do full flexion in the IP, but it still provides good stability, and it makes it easier for the patient to remove, so it's not so tight any longer. So yeah. That part of the web space, or that distance, can usually cut in when the patient is moving. So that one needs to be rounded. And the way I do that is I remove my splint again. Then I will put that part directly into the splint pan. It's a little bit difficult to heat that specific part because you usually heat other parts of the splint as well. So you can see now what I can do is I go up and I roll the material exactly over that grip, just to make it a little bit more comfortable for the patient. So. If we try this on now, we can see that that part there is not going to cause any discomfort for the patient. So. The next adjustment I will do is basically the length of the splint. I need to check so patient can do flexion and extension, and it shouldn't actually restrict that movement for the patient. This model is fairly well in the length, but I will still do a small adjustment. And the way I will do that, there's no reason for me to cut away. Instead, what I do is I will immerse that part into the water, and I will do exactly the same as I did in the grip. We'll do that small final adjustment. And then I roll it outwards slightly like this. Try this again. We can now see that that area here is now completely round and smooth. There's no risk for pressure there. This part here, as I have here, I could do the same thing, but I can also decide to cut this one straight. And I will decide to do that because I don't think that that will cause any discomfort for the patient. So I just align that and then adjust with my scissor. Try again. Fits good. Movement is okay. What I might do then now is I might do a slight trimming I usually find that the roller side here is quite important, but I can still do a little bit of adjustment here, so I just reach the ulnar part, and then on the roller, in the dorsal part, I will do an additional kind of rounding. Don't make that space too tight, because if you do it too tight, then there is a risk that the two ends will meet, and that will basically trap the skin and it will cause discomfort. So this is the result as we have. We have done an adjustment of the length of the thumb. We have done a little bit of a rolling or a rounding in the grip. We have also done a little bit on the lower part of the splint as well, and then we have cut the shape. So now we're ready for application of hook and loop. So now our Gauntlet model is ready, and now we're going to do application of hook and loop strap. I will do the same thing here, since the main function here is actually to do a little bit of opposition in this case, and abduction. And I will use this part to attach the hook, and then I will use basically the loop strap going that side, and I will attach that one permanently. So what I have here is a transparent micro hook, and the transparent micro hook has an advantage that it takes the color of the actual material, so I don't have to have a color at all. So I start by rounding this one so it actually fits the shape of the construction that I've done. Try that on. As you can see, it actually fits perfectly there. We'll do the rounding on the upper side as well. And now we'll remove then the protective film, and now you can see it actually is transparent. So when I position that onto my thermoplastic and I press it in place, it actually takes the complete color of the material. But like I said before, everything with self-adhesive I don't really trust, because it eventually peels off. So I will in that case use an Immo, about 5mm. I will then basically seal off the edge so it doesn't peel off. And the best way to do that is to use my heat gun. I will not use water bath. If I do that, there will be a little bit of water in between and it will not stick. So I put my heat gun on, and then I start heating the strip. When I use the Immo material, it becomes very, very, very sticky and quite hot. So you have to be a little bit careful when you do your application. Once I have the strip this, I can actually see exactly which part is hot or not. And then what I will do is I will prepare putting a little bit of water on my fingertip, because it prevents me from getting stuck into the material. I apply the material like this, fold it out like this, put a little bit of water on that side, continue basically to run around the edge like this. Now the material is actually very hot and sticky, so now I can actually work it in with my little bit of moisture. It also speeds up the cooling in the application. So now it's actually set. I have the same color as the main material, so it actually blends in very, very nicely. So on the top side, I will do the same. I will apply that strip. That strip for my side is a little bit too wide, so I will cut it down. The material that I have here is a double loop material that is semi-elastic. So it's actually quite comfortable. When I pull it and attach it, it provides a little bit of compression as well. So what I'll do here is I'll cut down the width of the material a little bit, and round it in the edge. And then I will basically cut a small hole in the material in the center. So that hole, when I attach that onto the material and then using the thermoplastic on top, will basically create like a synthetic rivet into the material. Before I do that, I will on the back side of the material take my heat gun and I will melt the loop surface slightly. It then provides a closer attachment to the strap. Once that's ready, I take my heat gun again. I spot heat the surface just for a second, because I don't want it to deform, but I want it to be sticky. Then I attach the strap like this. Just position it. Make sure that I can actually meet the hook there. And once that's done, then I will take a thermoplastic strip that has the same width as the material. Do the same thing there. Heat my heat gun. Melt that or heat that tip of the material. And when that folds, then it's ready for application. Now it's hot and very sticky. So I position that over the loop material. And I take my scissor and I cut that away. Once I've done that, then I use a little bit of water, put that on the surface, and then I can work the material straight in to the loop. And then where I have the hole, I hold my finger for just a few seconds so it actually gets contact with the surface. Now it will actually meet the end of the hook, and now it's actually ready for application on the patient. Now our Gauntlet thumb is also ready. You apply the hook, the loop strap, which is welded, and we have done the rounding of the edges. So it's ready to do the application on the patient. Slide it on like this. We close the strap with a little bit of compression, attaching it onto the hook.